It's Saturday, I'm in my PJs. This is my tracksuit and above my PJs. I'm relaxed, no makeup on, no nothing. You just have me playing, okay? So, as promised, I come here to talk about The Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. As I've mentioned before, I love this book. I read it in a Portuguese translation. Science fiction for me is that type of genre that for some reason I'm a bit frightened to read in English. I had an experience with Philip K. Dick's book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? So that's the title of Philip K. Dick's book that I read in English that I have in my bookshelf. Well, it was a total challenge for me, and so from then on out, if it was science fiction, I would buy in a Portuguese translation. And I don't know if you can really see it, but I have here 2001 Space Odyssey by also Arthur C. Clarke, and in a Portuguese translation as well. But the unfortunate thing is we don't have the whole series of the Space Odyssey in Portuguese translations. But well, if I'm being truthful, speaking now about Childhood's End, I don't really think that I would have, so many trouble to get through the story in the original, in English. But what else? I have here with me my commonplace book that is, well, this one is more dedicated to my readings. As I said or wrote in some posts on Instagram, I think that I for sure would write about Childhood's End. Well, that's what I did. I wrote in Portuguese because I read in Portuguese, but now I will try to convey my feelings in English. So let's go. So the premise of this book is that alien species comes to the Earth in a spaceship with several spaceships that are above several cities around the world. I'm sorry, I don't know where I stopped. Suddenly it became noisy in here and I was afraid it would get caught up by the mic, so I stopped. We are more or less in 1975. Something that I annotated here, it was that I would love to be more of a scavenger, a good investigator about the nuances of a book, especially in this type of books of science fiction and so on, where sometimes they are quite precise in the era they are occurring in, but other times they really aren't. But well, as I perceived from, and I had to come back to the book to write this, but so the appearance of these beings, or at least of these spaceships, occurs a little after 1975, and the end of the book is more or less the end of the book. I mean, when it ends, it's more or less 2161 year, or a bit after that as well. So you to have an idea where we are, where this story drives in. So of course, that's at the beginning, that's a lot of hypotheses or speculation of why these spaceships are in Earth and what in the hell are in them. But after a while, whatever is in the spaceship communicates with the people on the Earth. After a while, they become to call them the supreme beings, and they never show themselves to the human species, so to us. And they only talk, the only interaction that they have is with the president of the United Nations organization. So they don't speak to nations individually. They start little by little giving some notion of why they are here in Earth, in planet Earth, and what is their purpose, although they never are really open about it. The thing is, revolutionary movement becomes to arise because these supreme beings, they began to apply on Earth a plan, we suppose, their plan to unify the planet Earth, all the cultures, all the nations, so one culture, one nation, and so on, in terms of like no violence, no crime, no disease, really well and living conditions for all humans. And for instance, there's kind of an example that the author in the narration that is going to gives us, that is like these supreme beings are also against animal cruelty or animal abuse, shall we say. So imagine a bull and what they do in the arena with the bulls, because human beings were, or some of them at least at the beginning, were really resistant to abide to the rules of the supreme beings, and they continued to do whatever they were doing before their arrival. But the supreme beings have really persuasive, so I wrote here, they domesticated the human race. But their project is in the long run, it's in a long term. But of course, at the beginning, we don't know this. But well, for instance, what I was going to say, what they do to a bull in the arena, so the supreme beings, the pain that they apply to the animal when they, when they do that routine with the horse around the bull, and they perforate his neck. So the supreme beings, without doing a real injury in the humans that were observing and in the audience of that arena, they applied the pain that the bull was feeling in the humans. And so these persuasive strategies and ways of manipulate and get and domesticate the human race to abide by the rules of the supreme beings will occur for a very long time, and it will go gradually. And it's really interesting because the first few chapters we accompany the president of the UN and how he goes into one of the spaceships that is above New York City, and he goes to speak to Caroline or Caroline. I don't know how well to pronounce it, but that is the entity with which this president always talks to, and Carlin is somewhat a supervisor in Earth. With their exchanges back and forth, we understand that Carolyn has to give reports to someone, but till we get to that point is going to be the whole book basically. But it's really interesting, and there's something that this president does, and along the generations, because they stay in Earth for about a century, and they only show themselves after 50 years on Earth. And guess what? Characterization that has wings, that has horns, that has a really long tail with a kind of triangle, but you get a comment later on that it's not really a triangle on the edge of that tail, you know what I mean? But that's, of course, I'm supposing the imaginary that was supposed to be given, and even that's discussed in the book by the human race and by certain characters of why they are like they are, and of course the stories that the humans had before their arrival in terms of biblical stories and so on. Although I don't think, this is me being really ignorant, but I don't know if in the Bible there is a characterization of the devil. I think not. I think that in Dante's The Divine Comedy, perhaps. I don't really know. You see, I have to read, I really do. But I'm fascinated by this characterization and this hint here and there of perhaps they were already here in times past. And this is a discussion as well. At the beginning, there are groups, revolutionary groups, that consider that the man should be free to design his own destiny. Why this is a topic in the book? Because the supreme beings, although they give so many, many people think good things to the human race in this, they forbid humans to explore the universe. They don't forbid them to study or to continue their experiments or to even, for instance, all disease is eradicated, but they don't forbid humans to try to find the cure for something, even though that certain disease doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's a theme in this book as well. And something that happens and some topic that comes up is boredom. And I think that's a really striking and fascinating approach to the story. And something that it says here, in a point in time of the supreme beings being on planet Earth or supervising planet Earth, was that it says something like the end of fights and conflicts and of all types would end up as well in the extinction of the creative art. There exists thousands of artists, amateurs and professionals, but in the last generation, it didn't have appeared any work that truly was new and that would be relevant. Would it be in literature, music, painting, or sculpture? The world still lived in the glories of the past that would never come back. So the attraction of the new didn't have been assaulted by the supreme enemy of all utopias, boredom. So that's a phrase from a passage of this book. And I thought it was so interesting because really, think about it. If everything in the world were suddenly solved, you wouldn't have to do anything for yourself, really, because everything was given, or at least to some extent. Every disease, you didn't have to worry about your health because you knew you were going to be healthy, although you will die still. That is something that it wasn't clear here. Like, so diseases were eradicated, but humans still would die. But that wasn't really mentioned in any moment. So I don't know, well, if they die at what age? 100, 120, like 80? Like, when do they die? But we gather that generation after generation, the human race was getting accustomed to the presence of the supreme beings and their reign in some way. Persuasiveness, but a reign still. And so they show themselves, and then after that, there is in here a character called John. He's a young person, a young man, or before that. So as I was saying, so there were revolutionary groups that would not conform with what was going on. And they tried to do some things to boycott the supreme beings. But beyond this, there is in here a discussion about the loss of identity of each culture and nation with the formation of an united nation. I don't know how well this is terminology, in terms of terminology, because I read, as I said, a Portuguese translation. So, but I think you are understanding where I'm going at. And so I thought that this was really interesting as well, because there has been, or at least I have been watching some videos about this subject, about multiculturalism and globalization. And some thinkers nowadays, I'm talking about our present 2025, not the book, but in reality that we live in, about these topics, and how some of the people that were saying, or some of the fashionable thing to say was that globalization and multiculturalism would be a positive advance to humanity. But for certain people and certain thinkers, they are of the opinion that these somewhat of objectives for humanity don't work. This because they say if this occurs, multiculturalism, globalization, and so on, people lose the meaning of communion and familiarity and union. And without that, there will never be harmony and tranquility. Somewhat, of course, I'm paraphrasing and I'm saying in my own words, but this is kind of the idea that I've been seeing in some videos of some people that are sociologists, psychologists, philosophers, or simply free thinkers. that, you know, they aren't so pro multiculturalism and the globalization per se. So this kind of reminded me of this discussion, like if a supreme being, as we are talking about in here, would come and do that, yes, maybe we would lose some of the characteristics that make us like thinking in a community, right? Like nowadays and for centuries we have very different communities in the world, and if the objective of this supreme being is to harmonize and stop the factions between cultures and turning the humanity in only one culture, one nation, one community, then I don't know what that entails, because this is so new to me. I'm not, of course, well read in the subject, but I really would like to know your opinion about what I'm talking about. What is your stand, if you have one, or if you are also at least wondering about it, and if it's good, if it's not so good, what do you think? Let me know. Oh, but yes, of course, in this book, the supreme beings achieve this objective. So, come back into that character that I begin to talk about, John. He is a young man, as I said, and this may be a spoiler, so I don't know how else to do this. From this point on, you are going to have spoilers, so if you don't want to move on with the video, bye. So, John gets into a spaceship of these supreme beings undercover, and he goes to supposedly, if not one of the planets, or the planet of the original planet of the supreme beings. I think that's it. And so there's here talk about the voyage at speed of light, like 4 months to arrive there, 4 months to come back to Earth, but in Earth that 8 months would translate to 80 years. He was saying goodbye in a way to the people that he knew and loved. For this to happen, some other things happen before, and as I said, when after the mark of 50 years that the supreme beings reveal themselves to the human race, well, some things happen to John achieves this, but he achieves this, and he comes back after 80 years, and what he encounters is that supernatural, or paranormal, supernatural, I think, yes, in terms of human evolution has happened. But of course we have also a description, a few chapters about this happening in Earth. So we have leaps back and forth about in time, when John is in the Supreme Being's planet and what is happening in planet Earth, and so on and so on and so forth. So, you know. But well, there is a point that we get to know that the Supreme Beings are working for something above them, the Supreme Mind. And something interesting is that how we find out that the Supreme Mind needs the Supreme Beings as intermediaries and supervisors in the way to prepare this whatever species they are in whatever planet they are in, to incubate them in a certain extent, to promote their evolution to a higher state of being and mind and so on, so they can be somewhat of absorbed by the Supreme Being. So this is the final objective, but this is only revealed at the end of the book. And something that was really interesting was that Carlin, the supervisor in Earth, explains to John when he comes back to Earth that themselves don't really understand and don't really know what the Supreme Mind is, or what happens when the species that around the universe that are being absorbed by it go through, or what happens next, because the species and the race of these Supreme Beings are not, desirable for the Supreme Mind or something like that. And Carlin has a really kind of a sadness about it, because he knows that his species will never know what is there, what is above them, what is the superior mind, what is next in line of existence or in line of evolution. And another thing that he explains to John, because John asks this question, if the Supreme Mind is so supreme, right? Why doesn't he do these things alone? Why does he need an intermediary? And the Supreme Being, Carlin, explains that perhaps this is just an hypothesis that the Supreme Mind is so evolutive, right? That the abysm between, or the pit between, imagine, our human race and the Supreme Mind is so large, is so long, we are so apart that the Supreme Mind cannot get to us in a way to try to promote an evolution in terms of culture, in terms of behavior, in terms of adaptation to the new rhythm of life, to the point that it is supposed to be for them to be absorbed by it. Because Carlin even says that the Supreme Mind tried it before and it didn't work. Something that is curious about this is that John also thinks that the fact that the Supreme Beings didn't detect him in the spaceship was a bit on purpose, because in the end they wanted him to, because they leave Earth, the Supreme Beings, and John stays, and in the end John communicates with the Supreme Beings of what is happening in Earth. So not because the Supreme Beings weren't able to know or see, but having a testimony of the human eye, well, they also wanted that perspective. So many concepts are talked about in here, like think of the human race suddenly being controlled by a supreme being or something, or a superior species, right? And this kind of, we are going to eradicate everything that is considered bad, but also we are going to cut some freedoms or some possibilities from you, you know, how that would entail in, and even I don't know how, you know, my imagination in trying to consider this as a possibility, I don't really know how I will react, and maybe a apprehension paralysis or something, because it's so out of the box that something like this will happen. And also it was so funny because some characters here along the way tried not really sabotage, but you know, get to know better the supervisor, get to know better Caroline when they weren't showing themselves, you know. And because there was a discussion, well, if they don't have anything to hide, or if they don't want our suffering, why they don't show themselves, you know. That was a discussion between the human nations and the whole humans in Earth. And so many questions, and so many possibilities, and so many concepts. Like, if everything was given, or I don't know, if a way of life was given to you that you didn't have to worry about, if you have food, if you have a house or a roof in your head, if you get to travel to other points in the planet like nothing, if you know, if you don't have those type of worries and everything is achieved already, you don't know how, but you get to wonder, would you care to know how if it was given to you? Like, it's so funny, the topics and the questions that this book aroused in me, like, and of course in so many readers, I'm supposing. But yeah, this was fascinating, and I was really skeptical, you know, when the supreme being became a personification of the devil, because I was, of course. But yeah, the end was so, well, the end, if you want to know, there was a generation of children that became with supernatural powers, or began to express supernatural powers, and they were like taken from their parents, and you know, and they were put apart, and the old humans, we suppose, and I'm supposing, I don't know if this is clear to you, but it wasn't really for me, but I'm supposing like they were, well, they just had to live or die or whatever because there wouldn't be a next generation, you know, because the generation that was the objective was achieved and was conquered, the evolutionary generation, you know. So when John, for instance, came to Earth, he was the only old human still in Earth, because the rest of them have already died. and perusing Earth were those children, like, I'm going to say zombies, but it's not quite that, or it's nothing like that, but zombies in the terms that they were walking around without eating or sleeping or anything, and they were like that supposedly for some years now when Jen arrives to Earth. And the supervisors, the supreme beings, were there, and they were also wondering why the supreme mind wasn't, what was the wait for. But eventually there comes the timing, the right timing or something, and those children are like absorbed, and Jen and the all the planet like disappears. But as I was saying, I was a bit skeptical about, I don't know, like what the author will do with the story, and what when he starts to personify the devil and talking about religion and so on and so forth. Oh, and there's here a passage. I have shown this on Instagram, I think, but let me check if it's here. Something funny here is that I'm going to try to translate to you. It's easy to wonder how people are being transformed in passive sponges, absorb but never create. Did you know that the time that people pass watching television nowadays is 3 hours per day? From here on out, people are not going to live their own lives. This is going to be a full-time job. Everything to maintain us in par with the many television series. So this was quite funny because that's the problem we have nowadays, right? With maybe the most one or the more grave one, social media. But why I'm saying this? Well, just to show that Arthur C. Clarke, this was published in 1953, and this man was an engineer, a British engineer, and he had a mind so beyond his time. It's like that he predict the future in some aspects, of course, with the technology of his time, but you can make comparisons of what is happening today. And but my mind was blown, and I love this book, and I think so many conversations can be taken with. Tell me please of some of the concepts that I talk about here, like boredom, multiculturalism, globalization, the dying of individuality and singularity, borrowing the joke of the world becoming beige. What do you think about that? And what do you think about if you are religious or not? If you think this, of course, as religious motifs, yes, but very sparse. And what do you think about the supernatural, if you conceive that as way further in our evolution? Like, if you here is talked about the supreme mind, and I was wondering, because I said this before, but I see myself as an agnostic, but I don't know how well agnosticism is what I really am, because I'm more and more being doubtful of this terminology to apply to myself. But supreme mind, whatever, perhaps there is something, not in terms of what we say in the existent religions, but some other thing that we can even conceive. And if this was the attempt of Arthur C. Clarke to, I don't know, talk about this topic, I found it quite interesting and, you know, quite a turn, and it locked me in the story. It was great, really, really great till the end. I really adored this book and I highly recommend it. You will hopefully be astonished as I was. And yeah, I'm going to end this video right now. So hopefully you will read, and hopefully if you have already read it, please let me know what you think about all these things that I have talked to you about in this video. Let me know what are your thoughts. What do you think about this in the comments? Let's continue this conversation. And now I'm so eager to get to his other books and also other authors in science fiction genre. This book like solidified for me my adoration for science fiction. I'm sorry if you are not a fan, but I really am. So yeah, I will see you next time. Big kiss. Bye bye.